All right. Hello. Welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity, oneness, the highest levels of love light. Um, I just want to go into a little flow, but I first want to start off by saying thank you for everybody that I've connected with, that I've ever worked with, that has ever reached out and connected through this medium, if you will, of the internet. Every time we interact, and I don't mean like you and I, we as a community of humans, whether we label ourselves as light workers or channelers or healers or grid workers or well, I could go with star seeds, right? When we do this type of connection and interaction, what I've been shown is essentially we further activate one another. So whenever I'm working with someone in session and I am given the opportunity to see that person or that whatever it is that's coming through that particular channel, it's basically creating a portal. And I shared this in my previous session that I just did with someone, but I wanted to share it with you guys as well because oftentimes we may get, give, whatever it might be, energy healing, for example. Let's use Reiki as an example because Reiki has become very mainstream, which is a beautiful thing. It's a very beautiful tool to assist us in pulling through healing energies and expanding our vibrational frequency, in which we are then able to um, allow healing or coming back into oneness to occur, right? To with ourselves. So whenever we do these interactions with one another, or have these interactions with one another, I should say, whether it be through any of the mediums that all of us use, most people that are whatever our gifts are, we all have them in our own way. It could be through writing, it could be through art, it could be through science. Needless to say, what happens is we create a port, a node, and I was shown it's like a zip drive. And what I was kind of sharing is that we open up that zip drive that has all of this compressed information in it. And essentially, we pull the pieces that can help us in this now moment, in this interaction. And this can contain future pieces of information, past pieces of information, current pieces of information that can assist us in just expanding, in healing, in finding balance, in answering certain questions, or perhaps activating our consciousness so that we may be aware of answers to questions that we didn't even necessarily realize we had. And I could go on and on. But that's how this energy exchange interaction from one perspective works. So I'm grateful to everyone who's connected with me in any way through this web, if you will, because in doing that, it's a community of activations and it ripples out. It has such a ripple effect that many of us don't even realize. So I just did a session with someone, and because I was invited to read their energy signature or to share with them whatever was most needed for them in that now moment, it also showed me in my somewhat multidimensional aspect other places and spaces, and it helped me to zip line into that node or into that dimension or reality or whatever we want to call it, to then access, or we could just call it the Akash, right? To access information to then bring back to share with whoever I'm working with, but also you guys. So it's just beautiful. And it's naturally the way that we as a star family, if we want to call it that. And I always refer to star seeds. Part of the reason I've talked about this before, that I even labeled keep it simple star seeds, was because we have such a tendency as light workers sometimes, and humans, to overcomplicate things. To, no, you have to follow it this way, and then you have to open the door 3 times, and you have to put your right foot in, your right foot out, you put your right foot in. Like, if we just take a step back and simplify everything, we can sometimes recognize that we get lost in the details, right? So that's part of the reason I'm being shown that it is expansive and it is complicated in many beautiful ways. But on the flip side, it can also be very, very simple. And in a simplified version, we are creating this interactive, right, inner action that is assisting us in creating realities and commingling with each other, coming together in community, in a communicative reality expression. And we're doing this at such a quantum scale, but we are doing this. And so as we share our artwork, our dance, our science, our heart-centered thought patterns, and of course those are different, but from that space, we share this across the board, literally, this motherboard frequency playing board. It changes reality. It certainly changes our realities, or maybe will make us aware of something we weren't aware of before, or somebody else aware of something they weren't aware of before. And it ripples out and it helps us to further our expansiveness, our co-creativity, our ability to communicate past this old, beyond this old paradigm that we have been held within prior to this open accessibility that we're all creating. And I could go into so many different layers because it's infinite. So I'm just gonna go into flow a little bit here. For we are the architects. We are the subcontractors, if you will. Many of us are the contract holders, the negotiators. We are the builders of reality. And as we allow ourselves to clear the field, if you will, to allow certain concepts to stabilize the frequencies that are coming in. So this is, we're allowing certain concepts that are coming in. We're deleting, overwriting, overwriting false realities that perhaps at one time we may have believed were real, which then made them more real from one perspective, or created a temporary harnessing or coagulation. And this is being cleared. We're clearing the way, we're clearing the debris, and then we're debriefing and sharing, this is where we're headed now. This is where we at. This is how we do this. This is how it was done. And this is how we are doing this now moving forward. And when I use the word forward, I'm being guided to share that as a forward momentum. a forward momentum, and then moment to moment, and counteracting the mementos. The fresh maker. Mentos. So what I'm seeing is we're counteracting this mentalist. We're moving out of the heavy metals. We're detoxing. We're becoming the transcendentalists. We are transcending the details that were coagulated and misinterpreted. We're overwriting the rotten systems, rotten apples, right? I think it was Rotten Tomatoes is the movie review type thing, but anyways. And we're extracting from those concepts what can be utilized. I'm hearing for prosperity's sake, that can be utilized for counteracting certain, I'm hearing overexposed concepts that are not necessarily supported in the new system. When I say system, I see literally a brain that's linked into a heart network. It's hotwired, it's hardwired into the heart of us, the starseed community. When I say starseed, I never finished my sentence earlier, which happens a lot. We are children of the sun on the planet Earth. The sun is our star, so to speak. We are part of a star system. Therefore, we are the stars in human form that are planting the seeds for our future momentum. Future is not to necessarily be interpreted as in the future. It's looking ahead and seeing what can already be there now. Using our hearts as the projectors makes us the architectures. I'm hearing so much. This has been a little challenge for me to speak in English what I'm seeing and feeling, because it's so massive. It's, beyond most of my comprehension in human form, right? So I'm doing the best that I can to share what it is that I'm tapping into. We're all tapping into this in our own way. Some people are very good at tapping into a specific node, a specific zip drive, and others are better at implementing whatever they are information that, so we all have these different, I'm hearing, master abilities, right? Mastering abilities that we master. And many of us have carried that over with us, or are carrying it within our versions of us now. Now, I'm sharing this because I went into flow this morning about blood and what's carried in the blood and what we're carrying with us, and clearing out that debris. So as within, so without, right? So everything that's going on within us is going on outside of us as well, but that's all happening within us. It's all happening outside of us. And the more that we share with each other how or what it is that we're doing by being an example. But when I say the word example, I'm being guided to play with that. So I will. So I'm looking up the word example, and what I'm seeing is we are being an example for others. And that doesn't mean necessarily, so I'll just go with here. Example, I'm reading this off of Etymonline, one of the websites, etymonline.com. An instance typical of class, a model, either good or bad, action or conduct as an object of imitation. Oh, we could go so many places with this. It talks about sample or model. And I like to play with where the word came from. I just laugh because my guides are always like, you need to play with the words, Carrie. You need to play with the words, because part of what I do is change the wording around, because our English language is could be so expansive, and it could be a very living, light language, yet it hasn't been used as such. But what I'm seeing is they're talking about a definition of example as a transitive verb is archaic, to be or set in example to. Now I laugh about that because I don't necessarily associate archaic with a good thing, right? And again, example could be bad, it could be good if we're going to label it as one way or the other. But essentially, what my guides are sharing is that I was looking for the origin of the word, because sample, prototype, representative, illustration. So it's just, I love going through this and playing with it, because essentially there are some that feel like leading by example means they are dictating to others how they should be behaving. And that's not what the message that's coming through from my perspective is sharing. That could be one way of doing it, but the other way of doing it is just by holding that bandwidth. I was shown, and then holding that space is then being the way, right? So then others are made aware that there is another way, in case they are perhaps unable to see it from the place that they happen to be in. So for example, someone's going through a lot of traumatic activity in their lives. They may not know or understand how they can find their way out. And they might look at someone else who's been through that before, and they might see how they went through that and how they came out the other end, and they might go, okay, maybe if I do that, I will too. So it also means so much more though. And essentially the biggest message that keeps coming through is, how much can we stabilize our field? And if we're not in a field of stability, and I'm kind of going off into a different space here, but that's what I do. If we're not able to hold that field of stability, acknowledging and honoring that that's where we're at is okay too. And not pretending like everything is fine if it's not. And then in that essence, we're not leading by example, because we are essentially not being honest, or we're not in integrity when we are falsifying our movements and patterns. Now, we've heard the term fake it till you make it, and we could break that down and say why that's wrong or why that's useful or whatever, and we want to look at. But essentially, when I say fake it till you make it, I think of, you know what, I'm going to smile, do my affirmations, get grounded, and smile. Even sometimes smiling when you don't feel like smiling can change the vibration. So yes, I might smile and I might feel like a fraud. And in that sense, it may not make me feel better. But sometimes I might be feeling kind of down on myself for whatever reason. And then I just go and I sit outside and I smile for 5 minutes like an idiot, right? And I say that with love. Just goofy, just smile. And for whatever reason, somehow that changes the frequency and vibration because I'm able to laugh at myself a little bit and not be in this tight space. I'm opening rather than closing. And that, in essence, is faking it till you make it because all of a sudden you feel better. So, this is just my version and my perspective about what that means. That isn't being inauthentic. It means I'm going to take action to take this course of action to see if it can change my vibration from this to this. And it's different than not being authentic and going out and acting like everything's okay all the time and pushing all the stuff that we haven't processed and covering it up until it manifests later, because it will manifest in some way, whether it's in relationships or physical or whatever it might be. I'm going to go into a little light English. And we may follow in the footsteps of others that have led by example in previous accounts of history, that have done good deeds, that have had right thought and right action. And this is helpful. This is what many of us are doing now, currently. For we all have teachers and ancestors that we respect and uphold with the highest appreciation. And this is important for us to be able to learn from. And in upholding this form of tradition, it is the way of the ancestors, the storytellers, the shamans, that the young ones would follow in their footsteps. And some may say those are big shoes to fill. Or I'm seeing like barefoot, like they didn't have shoes like Bigfoot. And while this would be true to some extent, we say to you that you are the footprints in the sand. You are the footstep makers. You are filling your own shoes, so to speak. You are following in the footsteps that have been imprinted into the sands on your shore. The sands of time are slipping through and washing many of those footprints away. And yet here you are today as leaders, as the example makers, so to speak. Yet example holds the term exam within it. And we invite you to examine the footsteps that you think you are following. We invite you to always be looking further out, around, in all of the directions in which those footsteps lead. Looking forward from a place of integrity, looking behind, side to side, above, below, and going within to further examine inward, to then realize what is being followed or led into, or we are letting in, or we are aligning with outside of us. For you are the ancestors that the children and children's children and children's children's children will follow. You are creating Whose story? You are creating history, but whose story are you creating? Many of you recognize that you are the story makers, the story collaborators. And many of you are changing the story, changing the tune, if you will, that has been intentionally created to divide, perhaps from one perspective, yet you are rewriting old programs. And as you do this, you are the program enactors. You are bringing into action through higher heart coherence, through interaction, collaboration, through laughter, through, I'm hearing so much, like so many different access points, variations of ways of bringing this through. It's like we're creating this new reality and we're combining our resources in doing this with a greater sense of expansive objectivity, if you will. No longer objectifying objects. Oh, I could go into so many different places there. And as you allow your feet now to be the footprints that are imprinting into the sands of time now, this then creates the space in which all, I just keep seeing sound waves rippling out. This is affecting not only the future, but it's also affecting, I'm hearing that it's effectively making the past ineffective. Many of us do not understand time and the technology of time and how time is interacted and woven with. And while we share that time has so many more dynamics than what it is that you perhaps may understand in this sense of fluid economics, if you will, the value of time and all of the information that we have downloaded about time and that we have bought into, so to speak. But we invite you to see that the relevancy is always in the fluidity of the now moment. And we are truly boundless potentiality wrapped within physical form. And as we wrap together, as we communicate and come together, and as we unwrap our gifts and share them with one another, it allows us to unwind the clock, if you will. It allows us to count down and reverse the tick-tock that we have bought into in the past currency. For the past is no longer current, you see? It no longer holds the same value metrics, the same volume. For our cup runneth over, and that old cup was seen as half full. We are recreating the time dynamics, and we are therefore I'm hearing compensating through compassion. We are creating a comprehensive movement that is a fluid dynamic and interface exchange, an interphase, if you will, that phases out the old time bands and technologies, phases out the old realities. I think it's a cut. Is it a fade? That's a cut, haircut. I'm seeing like shaving off those hairs so that new growth can come out, because it was like all tangled and knotted before. So welcome to, I'm hearing, welcome to this life. For you are the rule breakers. I'm hearing the breaker of chains. Game of Thrones references, because I was hearing welcome to this life. There's no turning back. Everybody wants to rule the world, but we are the new rulers because we're ruling in equality, because we are setting the golden rule, which is phasing out inequality, like not being equal. We're fading it out. It's faded. Nekuwaite ikinia waha nini kuyaina kinini wahaine na kuya wahaina at ekua. I'm going to end on that note. I'm going to start a different video because I'm going into a little science that I may or may not post down the road. So I'm going to end in love and light. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you found this somewhat fun, interactive, if you will. And until the next time, namaste.